With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes of my time to Mr. Fine from the great state of Florida.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to hear is something the mainstream media does not want you paying attention to. A sitting U.S. congressman just stood on the House floor and said what millions of Americans have been thinking, but have been told they're not allowed to say. And whether you agree with him or not, you cannot ignore it.
With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes of my time to Mr. Fine from the great state of Florida.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And actually, I have an anecdote as well. 35 years ago, when the previous speaker from the Democratic side was here as a member of Congress, I was a 16-year-old page wandering around the floor in a blue blazer and a khaki pair of pants. So it's an interesting moment for me because what he said is, let's fund, I quote, let's fund the important services the American people deserve. Let's talk about important services they don't think they deserve. Over the last 4 years, 20 million illegal immigrants came into this country. And those illegal immigrants have killed 1,400 Americans. Let me give you just a few of their names. Kate Steinle, who was 32 years old in California. Laken Riley, who was 22 years old in Athens, Georgia. Rachel Morin, who was 37 years old in Bel Air, Maryland. Jocelyn Nungery, who was 12 years old in Houston, Texas. Liz Medina, who was 16, also in Texas. But those apparently aren't services that need to be funded. Since the conflict in Iran began, there have been 4 terrorist attacks in 4 separate states by 4 unaffiliated groups. They were working independently. Let's say their names. Those are apparently not important services that the American people need to know. Ryder Harrington, 19. Savitha Shah, 21. Jorge Peterson, 30. And Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw in Virginia. Those are apparently stopping that are not important services the American people deserve. While I stood here waiting to speak, the government announced that they've arrested 2 Chinese people in the state of Florida for attempting to put an IED outside of a military base. We're told funding 86% of the Department of Homeland Security is funding all of the Department of Homeland Security. That is not true. And also, as I stood here, I read one other thing, that in New York City, a 4-time deported Honduran illegal alien was charged with murder for shoving an 83-year-old U.S. Air Force veteran onto the subway tracks in New York City. But apparently protecting him is not an important service the American people deserve. What I have learned in this debate is Democrats care about 3 things: Muslim terrorists, Somali pirates, and illegal immigrants. And what's clear to me, if we want to fund the Department of Homeland Security and get them on board, there's one simple solution. Have all of those TSA agents declare they are illegal immigrants, because then they'll rush to get the money over to them to get them funded. It is not right to keep the government closed. If you want changes in policy, let's have those debates. But the same people who demand these folks not be masked spent years demanding the rest of us get arrested if we weren't willing to wear them. The hypocrisy is stunning, and the American people are not being served. We need the job to get done. We need to get the whole thing funded, and I support the resolution fully. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So today we're breaking down a fiery speech from Randy Fine. And trust me, this one is going to spark serious debate. He didn't hold back, not even a little. From illegal immigration to national security to what he calls outright hypocrisy in Washington. This speech hits hard. And I'm going to give you my honest take as someone who believes in law, order, and putting American citizens first. Let's start with the heart of what Fine is saying. He calls out what he sees as a massive disconnect. Back-end index pointing right politicians in Washington talking about funding important services. Back-end index pointing right while, in his view, ignoring the safety of everyday Americans. Now look, this is where things get serious. Fine brings up tragic cases, real people, real lives lost, and argues that these are the consequences of weak border enforcement. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You don't have to agree with every number he cites, but you do have to acknowledge that border security is directly tied to national security. That's not controversial. That's common sense. Here's my take. A country without borders is not a country. It's not about hate. It's not about race. It's about sovereignty. When millions of people enter a country illegally, you lose control over. Asterisk who's coming in. Asterisk why they're coming. Asterisk and what risks they may bring. And yes, most people coming in may be looking for a better life. But leadership isn't about hoping for the best. It's about preparing for the worst. That's the job. Fine also connects recent incidents, terror threats, arrests, and violent acts to what he sees as a broader failure of leadership. Now, let's be real here. We live in a world where threats don't always come from organized groups anymore. Sometimes they're decentralized, sometimes unpredictable. So when government agencies are underfunded, distracted, or politicized, that's when cracks start to show. And those cracks, they can cost lives. Another major point he raises is funding for the Department of Homeland Security. Here's where things get interesting. Fine argues that politicians claim DHS is mostly funded, but in reality, critical parts may not be getting what they need. And if that's true, then we have a serious problem. Because DHS isn't just another agency. It's responsible for asterisk border protection, asterisk counterterrorism, asterisk transportation security. That's not optional. That's foundational. Now let's talk about the moment everyone is going to be debating. His statement that TSA agents should declare they are illegal immigrants to get funding. Yeah, that line is going to explode online. Was it provocative? Absolutely. Was it meant to be literal? No. It was political sarcasm, aimed at what he sees as selective priorities. But here's the bigger issue behind the statement. Backhand index pointing right, who gets urgency in Washington and who gets ignored? That's the real debate. Fine also accuses political opponents of hypocrisy, especially when it comes to past policies versus current positions. And honestly, this is something both sides do. But Americans are tired of it. They're tired of asterisk rules changing depending on who's in power, asterisk policies being enforced selectively, asterisk leaders saying one thing and doing another. Consistency matters. Credibility matters. Here's where I stand. I believe asterisk America should be secure. Asterisk laws should be enforced. Asterisk citizens should come first. That doesn't mean shutting the door on the world. It means having a system that works. Legal immigration? Yes. Chaos at the border? No. And when politicians dismiss concerns about safety as overblown, that's when people lose trust. This speech isn't just about immigration. It's about priorities. What does the government exist to do? At the most basic level, backhand index pointing right, protect its people. Backhand index pointing right, enforce its laws. Backhand index pointing right, defend its borders. If those aren't being done effectively, everything else becomes secondary. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Randy Fine is speaking hard truths or going too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in strong borders, accountable leadership, and putting Americans first, make sure you like, subscribe, and stay tuned. Because we're not done having these conversations. Not even close.